Welcome, everyone. I'm Mickey Duzdovich, senior programmer here at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. And today we're going to be discussing the film Acasa, My Home. And joining us today, we have the executive director from UiPath Foundation, UiPath Foundation, Raluca Negulescu-Balaci, and we have the director of the film, Radu Ciorniciuc. So welcome. I hope I didn't butcher those names too badly.
The hardest part of the Q&A for you is finished.
Yes. Now we can have some fun. But before I get to you both, I wanted to say that Acasa My Home is such a powerful documentary, and it is something that I watched and I still have questions about. And what makes a good film for me is something that I think about weeks after I've seen the film. And what you've done with this film really resonates, and I hope people learn a lot from it because it is truly amazing. And I had so many questions, and I'm lucky enough to be able to ask a lot of these questions today. So I thank you all so much for joining us, and I'll jump into the questions right now.
Thank you for having us, Mikey.
Yeah, you're welcome. First off, Radu, I was wondering, how did you end up coming up around this story, and how did you end up meeting this family?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us here. It's filmmakers and storytellers in general would be nothing without platforms to show their work and to give them opportunities to talk about their work. So thanks again for doing this, especially in these very strange times. Yeah. About the film, I started the research in 2016. Back then, I wanted to do a reportage with my partner, with the screenwriter of the film, with Lina Avtogui, about how the government was about to give a very high protection status to this landfill close to the middle of Bucharest, where some activists and some biologists and scientists discovered a few years ago that there are a lot of there's a very special ecosystem there. Like in Chernobyl, in the middle of this abandoned land, nature took over and created this fragile but spectacular ecosystem with hundreds of species of birds, animals, and plants. And it was a truly amazing story for me, living just a few streets away from this amazing reservation. So I was just wondering how they're going to change it, how they're going to make it accessible, because one thing that kept the place quite protected was the fact that people wouldn't go inside, because there were a lot of urban legends that the place is dangerous and there's wild dogs and criminals and so on. So anyway, it was all in the good of it was all for nature, for nature's good. So we went there. We vaguely knew about the family living there. We weren't sure if they're still there, but we met two of the Inake boys. They introduced us to their father, to Jika Inake, and this is how we started. A few weeks into this research, it came, the idea of making a feature-length film came, and we just went for it because we thought that would be a better way to tell their story, in terms of the space for the context, the space for our research, for our understanding of their context and so on. We needed a bit more to not to make a necessarily a juicy, exotic story, but a story that would create a bit more understanding and meaning to this family's dramatic journey.
Now, this family themselves has, in the film, you can tell that they don't really like outsiders coming in. And I find it interesting that they granted you access to film them for 4 years. Can you talk a little bit how you earned their trust and how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, we were privileged since day one. The family wasn't necessarily, I mean, Jika, the father, was already working with the scientists and the campaigners that discovered the place and managed to pull off this protection status. So he was their man on the ground. He's their fixer. So because he was hoping to still be allowed to live there even after they would like declare it a natural park, he was very keen in working with the people that would come to either study or promote the place, including journalists. So he saw in us, I mean, there were teams of journalists from, The Guardian or from all the national media would come there, and Jika would go with them on the lake and give them a bit, give them a little speech about how special this place is. And obviously he had loads of knowledge about the ecosystem and so on, but his mission was to promote the place and to protect it. So he saw in us just another journalist team that would come there and spend a day or two, and then
Yeah.
and then they leave, and that's it. But we kept coming back because we discovered that there's an amazing I mean, we knew that they won't be allowed to live there anymore, even if Jika, which actually happened, he ended up as a ranger, like formally being employed, but it would have been illegal for anyone to build anything in the park or for people to live there. So it was pretty clear for us, not for him, unfortunately. Yeah. So we. Yeah, and we decided to stick with the family until they get evicted, and that should have been the ending of the film. But we kept going for another few years after that. But Jika obviously was at one point he looked at us and said, like, what kind of journalists are you? Like, you keep coming and you don't ask any questions and you just hang around. But we in the meantime, we were getting closer and closer to the kids because they were very interesting human beings for us, and characters. They had very strong characters, and we were amazed by their relationships and by their connection with nature. That was the instant fascination, let's say. We tried to keep it as transparent as possible with the parents, and again, we were lucky enough and privileged enough to be allowed to join the family, basically.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, and it shines through on the documentary that they are very trusting of you, and I really like the observational documentary that you put together there. Raluca, question for you. Before we get started into the questions about the films, could you tell us a little bit about UiPath, the organization itself, and how you ended up getting involved with the film?
Okay. UiPath Foundation is a global organization that was established 2 years ago by UiPath, which is a company that originated in Romania and is doing a great job on robotic process automation. And our mission is, as a global nonprofit, to support children from underprivileged families to understand and develop their potential through access to quality education, because it's not enough for kids to be in school. They also need a system of support in such a way that they can become the best version of themselves. And January 2021 is quite a special month for us because we're celebrating 2 years since we've started this work. And 1 year since we've been partners with Radu and his team in promoting the powerful message of Acasa, my home. Why we joined? Because the documentary really spoke to us, and it's very much aligned with our mission to support children from impoverished families to have access to quality education. And we, what we've been doing in the past year was, on one hand, to raise awareness on the importance of creating the best conditions for children to have access to quality education, and also to support the kids from an ACE family. And they're amongst the many kids we are working with in Romania and India. And yeah, this is a bit about us.
Now, what has UiPath done specifically for this family that is in Acasa?
So UiPath and UiPath Foundation are two different entities. We're very much connected because UiPath created us, but we have a different mission. So UiPath Foundation is involved in supporting the kids from an ACE family to stay connected to education. And I don't want to disclose this because probably some of the people who are watching right now don't know that unfortunately Gica, the father, passed away at the end of towards the end of 2020, and this has been a tragedy. And to help the family go through this difficult times, we enrolled the children in our programs. They have scholarships, devices to stay connected to online school, and also we support them to cover the costs of heating during the winter, because we have quite harsh Romanian winters here in Romania. And we are supporting the family in the long run to become independent and to cope with the loss of Gica.
Oh, well, I appreciate what you're still doing for the family and everything. So that's wonderful. Sorry to hear about his passing. Radu, can you talk a little bit about the importance of your opening when you open with the drone shot? I normally don't like talking about drone shots, but it's such a powerful moment because it shows you exactly where this family is. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that opener?
Well, yeah, it took us. I wanted to shoot that. I try. It took us a lot of time to make to actually accept the fact that we're going to use a drone in a film that's that should have been a straightforward, simple, brutal emotions, story. So any artificial, artifact in the film wouldn't necessarily it wasn't necessarily a thing that we wanted to make. So the drone came I think a year into the filming, because we did a lot of the interviews on one of the buildings, the top of the buildings where the campaigners had their offices. And ever since, I mean, the first time I went up on one of those buildings and saw how straight the line is between this wonderful green land and one of the densest neighborhoods in Bucharest, I said, like, we need to find a way to show this somehow, because it was also speaking about the plot as well. It was very well. It wasn't necessarily an aesthetic, only an aesthetic, let's say, choice to show this conflict between what's at stake and what's going to happen in at one point. But it had dramaturgical value as well. So I asked a brilliant drone operator to help us do that, and we did it. I think we shot like half a day for that, because we needed we needed to go very high to show both the dimension of this wild space, but also to have a reveal that would split the screen in half, to put it simple. I was very glad when I saw it, and I knew that this was it. This was the shot that we were looking for some time now. And yeah, again, it wasn't at first. We didn't think that we're going to use a drone for this film, but then it became very clear that the argument for the dramaturgical argument, but also the aesthetic argument, won against our stubbornness of using of putting so-called fake. Not fake necessarily, but like this film should have been natural and less artificial, let's say. So I think my colleagues did a great job with that shot. And
Now, follow up with that. What the kids think of the drone? Because it'd be very interesting to see something like that.
Well, I mean, you'll be surprised, but there were when we were shooting that shot, they were just looking at us, and I said, "There's so many other people that came and did this." They asked us to play around in the lake, and then they shot us with this helicopter, and then and I couldn't. I mean, like, yeah. So they weren't necessarily surprised. Of course, it was super fun to scare the birds with the drone, and then they had these old crazy ideas of following the swans on the lake with the drone, and then it was pretty funny and engaging. They were just they were just right next to us when we were shooting it, so we had that input implemented in in the shot.
And so the father, Gika, he makes some decisions in the film that some people may not agree with. And I was wondering for you, a lot of his choices are driven by fear. And I'm just wondering, did you at any point question his choices?
Oh, I mean, I think it's 98% of the times I had I questioned and confronted sometimes his choices, and it was I'm coming from a patriarchal family as well. It was quite painful for me to see this true patriarch governing his family and being sometimes quite strict with his children. But it was a bit later in the project when I understood that, as you said, a lot of his choices came from fear, but I wasn't necessarily I didn't understand where this fear was coming from. And he was I mean, in the 90s, when the communism fell in Romania, there was a very gray period of time. Romania was under an embargo. A lot of the families were suffering from poverty and so on. Like the money value dropped a lot. Industries fell as well, and he was working in an industry, having a quite well-paid job, also good social status as well. So in the 90s, he made a mistake, like many other people that lived through those times. He ended up in prisons for a few months, and when he got out, he wasn't the same. Something really bad happened to him then. And it wasn't until I understood that all of these decisions came out of the fear of course, protecting himself, but also protecting his loved ones. So when I learned that I'm going to become a parent myself, I understood that there's so few things that you would not do, if none, to protect your loved ones. If you think that if life told you that in order to protect your loved ones you need to isolate from the world, I'm in some circumstances that seems a reasonable idea right now for me. So this kind of gave me the it gave me the made me more willing to give him the space he needs to become a fuller human being in terms of the film, in terms of a character. And because we didn't want to do a black and white film, we didn't want to say like this is right and this is wrong, because life's never like that. Like every one of us although we're idealists, you know, like we're both bad and good, you know.
Yeah.
It all depends on the circumstances we're put in. So yeah, I mean, I embraced him at the end. I embraced him as how he, you know, like as a human being, and I'm very grateful that I managed to gain that, let's say, to it, to be a bit more wise in his concern, because in previous edits of the film he was even I was very ruthless with him. I was you know, it was very hard for me to grasp him. So I'm glad that we managed to tone it down, and offer him the opportunity to be a human being as he deserves, you know. So as we all deserve. Yeah. Although we have a lot of skeletons in our closet, some more than others. Yeah. But we are all both good and bad. So.
And Raluca, education is a key to really getting out of poverty. Can you speak a little bit why you find this to be so true?
Yeah, definitely. This is one of the statements that defines our interventions as well to UiPath Foundation. And I'm testament that education is key out of poverty, because I come myself from a low-income family from the eastern part of Romania, and I was very privileged, despite all the difficulties, to have parents that supported me to reach my potential. But at UiPath Foundation, we're looking on how we can support children to develop the skills for the 21st century, because it's not only about this obsolete education that we might encounter in the formal educational system. We're talking about those palpable skills that can enable these kids to become a generation that will cope with the challenges of a fast transforming world. And while I'm a firm believer in education, that it can really offer a chance to escape poverty. At the same time, working for almost 12 years in some of the poorest communities in Romania and across Europe and in India, I am fully aware of the challenges that the children are facing, and you've seen in the documentary as well, because the story is quite unique, and their path to the urban life is very challenging, but at the same time, this is not unique in the sense that so many families are facing similar difficulties in terms of access to education, access to decent living conditions, to clothes and educational materials and so on. So I think our approach at the UiPath Foundation is that we enable children to have access to quality education, but at the same time, we create a system of support, of 360-degree system of support, in which they receive monthly scholarships, educational materials, medical support if necessary, in such a way that they can really focus on education and grab this opportunity to break the cycle of marginalization. And we're doing this looking at the ecosystems in which the children are living, working with the schools, partnering with other local nonprofits, and working towards empowering also teachers to see potential among the children. One of the preconditions for children to really be successful educationally is to grow in a house where they have at least 50 books, which I was lucky from this perspective. I had an aunt that was always bringing me books, and I was so lucky because I was reading so much, but I had this opportunity. But we work also with kids to have access to books, and especially in the first years of life, in such a way that they start school with they have a good start in education in the first grade and so on. And we work with a national partner in Romania, and we've provided more than 20,000 books in the past 2 years to more than 10,000 children. And we work also with teachers so they can provide the best quality education to everyone. So poverty is complex, but also the solutions to poverty are they have a similar degree of complexity, and we have to look at the environment and the conditions and the challenges the kids are facing. And this is what we've been doing in the past 2 years, and we're very committed to do this in the long run.
And currently, in the state that the world is in with COVID-19, and everywhere it's been difficult for underprivileged kids to get access to education because everything went digitally. Can you talk a little bit about how things are going in Romania involving that and being able to provide digital platforms for these families?
Yeah, definitely the pandemic generated a shock for educational systems across the world, and Romania is one of the countries that was really hit by this context. And the estimation is that around 1 million children couldn't connect to education whatsoever because the schools were not able to provide the devices, and the teachers didn't have them digital skills to cope with these challenges. So it's sort of a systemic blockage that we've seen in 2020. At the same time, we're looking at the pandemic as an opportunity to really bring a quality education to the most remote communities, and it has provided an incredible context in which we managed to bring devices to all the children in our programs across Romania, and with in good internet, because that's important as well, and to connect them with amazing teachers who in such a way that the children could stay connected and to develop their literacy and numeracy skills as well as English. So I think that, yeah, now that we're at the beginning of 2021 and we're very more optimistic and hopeful that this will be a better year. Looking back, we're also seeing that 2020 accelerated access to quality education by providing this platform for digital education, and this is part of our mission. And as skeptical as we might be that the access to education in poor communities can be a huge challenge. At the same time, I think we should grab this opportunity and really transform the chances for a bright future for these kids. And we're actively doing that with our partners. And yeah, we're very, very grateful for all the support we had last year.
That's amazing, and I'm glad that support came in for you guys to continue your fight for education. Radu, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cinematography of the film itself. It's beautiful in the beginning and with the nature and everything, and it's so natural the way you shoot the first half of the film, and then you change your cinematography when you head over to the city, and you allow. In the first half, you allow nature to frame the film. And then in the second half, it seems like there's a little more rules put into place and more structure to how you're framing. And can you talk a little bit about making that transition?
Yeah, it was, as I told you, at first we started doing interviews, like loads of interviews and hours of talking heads, and we weren't necessarily sure on how to approach this film, how to approach the story visually. And at one point, obviously, because we have background as both writers and but also photographers, and I'm talking about the core team, the Lina Avdovi, the screenwriter, and Mircea Topoleanu, my co-DOP, and we decided to make a film that's not gonna necessarily tell a story from about a family, but a story that comes from within a family. So this is why we chose this approach of doing an observational film. This meant that we would spend a lot more time and resources, obviously, on our filming process, and but also that it's going to cost us a lot in the post-production, because we didn't have 20 people with sound and lights, and like we We just like did things on the go, and this meant that we would go through this process of spending enough time in order to be personally connected to what was happening around us. I know this sounds a bit abstract, but this is how it went. It's mostly about the instinct and about inspiration, and this only comes when you invest time and interest in your characters and in their environment and so on. So I think it happened quite natural, you know, in the Delta, of course, in nature, of course. Even the family's life was governed by rules that weren't necessarily formal. You know, there were everything is quite flexible in nature, although there is a pattern. It's not the same pattern that we have in our own society, where we use these square boxes and structures that are natural, let's say. And this, of course, influenced the way we shot the second half of the film when the family moved into the city. And on the same principle, although we started using tripods and we started using, you know, like composing in a bit different matter, but this was at first we didn't. I wasn't necessarily sure that it's going to work, because it was already obvious, you know, the change. You know, like, but strange enough, it did work. It did work in the sense of and for me, although it was heartbreaking, it did work in the sense that little by little you would see this magic that I saw around these kids fading away, while they were being integrated more and more into this new world. So with these little things that we did in the cinematography, I think we managed to underline these nuances that weren't necessarily visible on the surface, although the surface was so contrasting, you know, like in terms of the environments we were shooting in. So,
and there's a really personal moment in the film involving the eldest son, Bali, with his girlfriend. And I was wondering how that came about. And the moment I'm talking about is when they're talking about, his girlfriend's talking about being pregnant. And can you talk a little bit about that moment and capturing that moment, because it is quite, it's like a wow, it's thrown at you.
it's the same. Again, it took a lot of time to understand what would be the best way to direct this, even these scenes that are very intimate, are very delicate. And again, I think our background as writers helped a lot, because a lot of the times we would visiting or we would keep in touch with the family, whether with our cameras. It was you know, human to human relationship in many ways. And it was very clear to me that the family needs to not because it was a very patriarchal family, you know, like for so many years in the city. This patriarchal system of Jikas was confronted both by the city, by the community, and his own family, his own boys who were teenagers now, and they just met the new world, and they started making their own ideas, and they were confronting their father as well. And as you probably know, in patriarchal systems, there's no democracy in terms of this. It's exactly the opposite of democracy. There's no communication, and there's no sharing of emotions. There's no exchange of you know, like there's no emotional exchange through communication in these communities, families, whatever. So I understood that they need to talk with each other, as they separately, they were telling me that they have a lot of problems with each other, and they don't know what to do and so on. And I was always telling them, like, you need to talk with each other, you need to start communicating, because, you know, like, this is how you solve problems. And it was actually it was in this manner that I managed to direct these scenes, you know, I was just visiting. I said, it's now it's time for you guys to talk with each other, because you are telling me all these things that and I can't really help you unless you start talking. So I would sit, I would have my camera in my hand, and then I would ask a question. Vali, what do you want to say to Elena or to your father? And he would naturally address all those things to me, and it's like, you know, you need to talk with with Elena or your father. And so it was quite it was as if, you know, we did mediation. This is basic mediation, conflict mediation. And it worked, because, you know, like 2 minutes into this scene that can seem as uncomfortable, there was, you know, there was all this fire and all this, you know, like all these things that were never said, and that should have been said, you know, like and it would just go natural, you know, because they are very strong characters and very strong human beings, and they would just go for it. And that was a really good exercise for, and now I think that at least the kids, they tell each other all these things that they would never tell a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm quite proud of that. Yeah.
And maybe you both can touch on this one. And this happens all over in any country, but I want to talk a little bit about racism in Romania, and some of it shines through in the film itself. There's some moments like the neighbor with the family being racist towards them, and there's even a moment where the I can't remember her name, but the lady who moves them into the city, it's her house, and she goes, at the end, her last thing she says, she goes, "I'm not racist. I don't care who, I'm not racist." But it's very like triggering that you have to even say that. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the politics of racism in Romania.
Well, I think Raluca is better suited to talk about this, as she has been working for over a decade in communities that are being marginalized and are being discriminated. And this is not something that is happening in the last decade or two. This is happening. This is a long history of abuse and discrimination and killings and injustice towards communities of minority communities, especially Roma.
I've been working extensively on this topic, and I just wanted to say that Roma is the largest ethnic minority in the entire European Union, and some of the largest in Romania, close to 2 million people, the estimations done. Officially only 600,000 people, but the numbers are way bigger. But I think what really I see so many connections with what happened in the United States lately, because the Roma population, it has also been enslaved on the territory of Romania for more than 500 years, which is the longest period a population has been enslaved in the entire world. And this is something that is not known by Romanians, by Europeans. It's not in the history books. There have been so many efforts to make this to make justice, you know, to the history of this this population. But going back to what Radu was saying about the overlapping of marginalization, ethnicity, that is true. Many, I mean, it's 3 times, if you're a Roma child, you have 3 times the chance, the unfortunate possibility to be in poverty, unlike other kids. So on the other hand, there are many well-integrated Roma, and they are part of the society. Some of them do not recognize their identity in fear of discrimination. But as you've seen in Acasa, there's a lot of unconscious bias in relation to to the Roma, and you've seen that horrible scene with the police that is really aggressive towards the kids, which is completely unacceptable. But unfortunately, it's happening in so many communities across Romania, and media is not showing this kind of abuse, is showing like this very stereotypical stories about this community. And I've been working, many of the communities I've worked with, and we at UiPath Foundation, we have maybe around 40% of the kids in our programs are of Roma ethnicity, and we value a lot diversity and gender equality in how we embark children on this path to quality education. But I think it continues to be a huge issue in Romania and across Europe. And I think we need to see the stories of abuse. And the documentary is doing justice, to this kind of unfortunate encounters between authorities and the most marginalized populations in Romania. And because this is the key to really becoming aware and do something about it, because this is the first step to acknowledge the discrimination and racism, and to move towards action and zero tolerance to such situations. But unfortunately, it is a barrier for many Roma kids, including an access to education. So it's something that we need to be aware of at this point.
Yeah, and as we're closing up here, I wanted to check in and see how are the kids doing? How's the mother doing right now? How's everything going for them?
Well, luckily, a lot of people are interested in the families. Even from before publishing the film, there was this whole community that was trying to take care of the Enache family, to have a smoother transition to the life in the city, to help them be a bit more independent. I would say that the mother is beginning slowly but surely, is beginning to understand her role as a new pillar of her family, because everyone is expecting that her is going to be, like the lead, I guess. So the older children, even Vali moved back to, and her older daughters moved back with her, and so that she won't be alone. I think she has a lot of help. Definitely the help that they have, and their support that they have from the UiPath Foundation and the other volunteers is something that's making things a lot more easier for her and for the children. Right now, I know Raluca didn't mention, there's also a social assistant that works on a daily basis with her, and because Romania is not necessarily the easiest country when it comes to bureaucracy, especially for someone who never dealt with institutions as Nicolina, the GCAS passing away meant a bureaucratic disaster for Nicolina, and this is luckily this is being solved now with the help of a social assistant from the UiPath Foundation. And the kids are great. I have to say that I'm very proud that they're all doing classes on their Skypes, and we have Gigel, who's the leader of the pack and who's always making sure that everyone is on time and attending their classes, and and there's a lot to go when it comes to integration. Sometimes it takes generations, especially if you come from a population, for a community that's been abused and that's been deprived from the opportunities that we all should have for so many years and generations. but I think the kids, the Yanake children, had the opportunity and not only the opportunity but the strength to take advantage of the opportunity that they I think they made a huge leap forward in terms of their integration. I really believe that most of them would attend the university, and they would have access to things that they would never have if it wouldn't have been for all these wonderful people and partners that would assist them in these in this spooky and frightening and like dramatic journey of theirs. Imagine having to go through something like that in such a short period of time. Like it's heavy, man. But the kids are smiling, and this is at the end of the day, this is what matters. And they still go through it with their smiles on their faces, and this is how you win all the battles in life, I guess.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that they're doing well, and I want to thank you, Raluca and Radu, for joining us today, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing out there, and best of luck with the film, and I hope to see you again someday down the line.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you.